Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to UCOV, which stands for Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Venice. Everyone is welcome here, and we're especially delighted that you could join us today. We hope you'll find something in today's service that inspires you. I'm Janet Knutson. I'll be today's worship associate. If you'd like to learn more about UCOV and all we offer to enhance your learning and connection, please visit our website at uucov.org or our Facebook page. If you're joining us online today, please know that your donations are welcome and can be made by clicking the donate button on our website. If you're a first-time visitor with us today, we want to meet you. Are there any visitors here? Just raise your hand. We're going to bring you a mic in a minute. And so we'd like you to stand up, tell us your name and where you're visiting from.
How do I work this? Hi, I'm Tracy Benton, and I live in Venice year-round.
Nice to meet you, Tracy. Thanks for coming.
Welcome.
I'm Dave Auxier. Also, I go by Denver because there's a lot of Davids out there, so not that many Denvers. I'm from Venice. I've been here 21 years, and I'm delighted to be with you all this morning.
Welcome. Any other visitors? I think that's it. Well, visitors, if you haven't already done so, we hope you'll stop by our welcome table on the lanai and fill out a visitor card so we can keep in touch with you. Also, we have refreshments on the lanai after the service. Just enter through the door on this side. So we have a couple of events we want you to be aware of. Board members will be here in the sanctuary after service. If you have any questions at all about things going on with the search or any questions, you can stick around a little bit after service and they will be here to answer your questions. Games and lunch will happen this Tuesday at 1 p.m. I believe that's in Waters Hall. And the Sunday morning experience team is planning a pancake breakfast on July 16th in Waters Hall, between 8:15 and 9:15. So mark your calendars now for July 16th. And there will be a sign up on the lanai looking for people to serve food, clear up food, make food, and all the rest. And if you have any questions about this, please see Kathy Avery. We're also starting a crafting corner. So if you knit, crochet, cross-stitch, do embroidery, or any other kind of crafting, and would like to join a UCOV sewing circle, the first meeting will be Thursday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. in Asta Linder. Again, see Kathy Avery if you have questions. Now, Father's Day is coming up on June 18th, and to thank the dads, we are going to have refreshments on the lanai after service. And you'll see a sign-up sheet on the lanai that just says donuts. So hopefully that'll be enough to get you to sign up, and then we'll know how many donuts to have. There's also, Amy has an announcement.
I actually have two, but one's more fun than the other. Steve Leapley is asking if anybody is available to take garbage cans out on Wednesday evening and at least do a drive-by on Thursday to see if they've been taken back in while he's out of town. He would deeply appreciate that. Please talk directly to Steve. He would also, if anybody wants to help with grounds stuff while he is out of town, please talk to Steve. The more fun thing, this is what our GA delegates will be wearing at GA. So we are advertising. Are you our next minister? Live in paradise, work at UCOV. So Marcia, after the service, if you would come up and grab the bag from me, I've got you guys shirts.
There are other events in your weekly handouts, so please be sure to take a close look at that. And if you're watching at home, you can find them on Breeze. Now we are entering into a sacred space, so please silence all your electronic devices, and our service will begin with the prelude. Thank you, Lisa. We light this chalice and we ask that it serve to light the way through dark paths and deep woods, sunlight meadows and city streets. I'll now turn the pulpit over to our interim minister, Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw.
Hi, as advertised, I am Reverend Amy Petrie Shaw, and my pronouns are she or they, and I'm so glad you're here today. Because today we're talking about the wisdom of Patrick McManus, who was a nature writer and a humorist who died in 2018. And that seems like an odd thing to talk about in a UU church. But Pat is the flip side of the gun nut. As much as he was a hunter, he was a conservationist. He worked to make sure that the elk could live freely, that deer were treated well. He referred to people who put their guns front and center as ammosexuals. I have a huge amount of respect for this man. He worked for Field and Stream for years. And his buddy, Jim Zumbo, was the field tester for a lot of guns, went out and did the field conservation stuff. And at one point, Jim came out and said in multiple articles, "I don't believe that weapons of war should be on the streets. I don't want to see semi-auto and full auto weapons in the hands of hunters." It's crazy. And Field and Stream fired Jim Zumbo. What did Pat McManus do? Pat McManus was a humor writer who had done the back page, the exit laughing for Field and Stream for 40 years at that point. And he said, "You rehire Zumbo or I quit. Because I don't think weapons of war should be in the hands of hunters." The guy is sweet and funny. He writes about loving your family. He does stupid things very publicly and very often, usually accompanied by the laughter of his beloved wife, Darlene, who he refers to as Bun or Honey Bun. Larry Case, who works for the Beckley, West Virginia Herald, wrote that Pat McManus was born on, well, maybe it'd be better to hear it from him, and these are Pat's words. I was born in an old farmhouse 3 miles north of Sandpoint, Iowa on August 24, 1933. Now, there was some question about the exact date of my birth because my father got the attending doctor drunk, and the doctor mistakenly wrote in August 25 instead of August 24 as the date on my birth certificate. This is according to my mother, she and I being the only sober ones in the house at the time. I've been rather pleased with the mistake ever since I first heard about it. Confusion is the natural environment of the humor writer, he says, and it is best to get introduced to it as early as possible. So today we're going to experience a little of the divine confusion and sacred wisdom of Pat McManus. Let us come and worship here together. So please take a second and just say hello or introduce yourself to the people around you. And for our first hymn, we're going to do one that we did a few weeks ago because we're still learning this one, and I want us to hear it again while it's kind of fresh. It's called When the Spirit Says Do, and it works like this. The words change each time through. So the first time it's, you got to do when the Spirit says do, you got to do when the Spirit says do. When the Spirit says do, you got to do, oh Lord, you got to do when the Spirit says do. Second time through, it's sing, and the third time through, it's laugh. So the second time through it, you got to sing when the Spirit says sing. You got to sing when the Spirit says sing. Third time through, we're going to laugh when the Spirit says laugh. And the final piece of it, it just keeps repeating, Spirit says do, Spirit says do, Spirit says do, Spirit says do, on into forever. Would you play just the intro that you're going to play for them so they can hear it? This is the intro you're going to hear. And that's when you kick off. Dun, 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 dun. Okay. We're going to give this a shot. I ain't promising nothing, but we're going to try it. So if you'd please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and join in singing number 1024. When the Spirit says do, we're going to do 3 verses. round of applause. You did it. Our children's chapel time is a time when we tell the smallest who are here with us and who are following along at home exactly what it is that the grown-ups are going to be talking about later. And today we're talking about a really funny guy named Pat McManus, and Pat was pretty goofy. He did a lot of dumb stuff at various points, and a lot of people laughed at him. But most of what he was talking about was kind of serious under all the funny stuff. For example, he asked us some pretty important questions about why we'll smack a fly, but we won't go smack a bunny rabbit, right? No. Why is it okay to kill a worm? But we wouldn't step on a dog. That'd be gross and horrible. He says it's important not to just be against things without knowing what you're talking about. So Pat used to get out in nature and try all kinds of stuff. And usually he'd get run over by a cow or stepped on by a pig. But he tried again and again and again. So he's telling us some important stuff. One, get out there and experience the world around you because it's beautiful. Two, learn for yourself what the world looks like. And three, don't get stepped on by a cow. All of which are important lessons. So that's what we're going to be talking about later. I ask you all to help me to sing the children out to their classrooms with the Reeve Children's Benediction. We do an offering every week, not because we want to get rich from it, but because we want to remind ourselves that generosity is a theological perspective. Doesn't matter what you give. What matters is that you remember, be generous in spirit and soul this week. Our offering words are always offered with levity, though, because giving should happen with a smile and it should never hurt. There was a new family that had just moved into town, and their son came to church on Sunday but seemed very upset. His RE teacher asked him if anything was wrong. And the boy said sadly, "No, I was going to go fishing this morning, but Dad told me I had to go to church." The RE teacher was very impressed that the boy's parents had done this, and she asked the boy if his father had explained to him why it was more important to go to church than to go fishing. The boy said, "Yeah, he did. Dad said he didn't have enough bait for both of us, and I was out." I suspect Pat McManus would have approved highly of this young man. The morning offering will now be given and received. Thank you all so much for everything you do for the life and the work of this community. Because it's all about community. We're here together as a community of human hands and human hearts, sharing our laughter and our tears. We're entering into a time of sharing our joys and our concerns, and you can raise your hand and someone will bring you a microphone if you have a story to share. Please share information only with permission. You are always welcome to come up before or during the service and light a candle for yourself to commemorate a joy or a sorrow. And during the joys and sorrows, I'll light them for you. So if you have something to share, please raise a hand.
Well, this is both a joy and a concern. I'll be leaving on Wednesday for 4 months, and I'm trying to get everything done, packed up, and even learn how to disconnect the battery in my Prius before I go.
I'm Bob Robinson, and my wife and I had a real joy this year because we were in awe of the beauty of this blue boat of ours. We got to go up to the Canadian Rockies, and it was breathtaking, exceeded expectations, and it just makes both of us want to appreciate the beauty that's around us here, too. So it was wonderful.
May the love of this community hold all who need love and concern. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May we never look away when we're needed. May the grieving be comforted and the tired find rest. May the broken places be healed, and may those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant.
Our first reading is an excerpt from The Fried Flies, Please, and Easy on the Garlic. And this comes from The Night the Bear Ate Goomba by Patrick McManus. As Amy mentioned, Pat McManus is an avid hunter, fisherman, camper, hiker, and all-around outdoorsman in real life. And fortunately for his readers, he's very, very funny. Underneath the humor, however, there is a deep thread of love and concern for animals, the environment, and the people of the planet. He writes, Martha now leans forward, her eyes hard and gleaming with anticipation of closing in for the kill. So tell me, Mr. McGillis, and I'm sure all those present will be as interested as I in your response, what is it about killing poor wild creatures that gives you so much sadistic pleasure and satisfaction? Gee, I don't know, I say. I've always enjoyed killing things. I haven't thought much about it. All I know is something sets me off and I suddenly have to start killing. One of the things that sets me off is vichyssoise. So I'm sure you'll pardon me if I don't eat any more of it, delicious as it is. I feint playfully at Martha with my butter knife. Well, she huffs, I would certainly never have anything to do with killing. The main course arrives. Oh, cries Martha, rack of lamb, one of my favorites. I'm afraid I'll have to pass, I say. I try to avoid eating anything that died of natural causes. Smells good, though. Is there any chance this lamb could have died in an accident? In truth, I've never cared much for killing. I wonder why people should be so unconcerned about killing a fly and go berserk over the killing of a deer. Is it because flies are more numerous than deer that it's okay to kill them? Of course, people too are more numerous than deer, so we'd best avoid that line of reasoning. Is it because flies aren't as pretty as deer? Most people aren't as pretty as deer either. If we kill things just because they're ugly, my friend Rich Sweeney would be in big trouble. He wouldn't show his face on the street, I can tell you that. Maybe some people can't stand the thought of killing deer because deer babies are so cute. Fly babies are about as uncute as it is possible to be. Personally, though, I don't think the degree of cuteness should be the deciding factor in whether something is okay to kill. Maybe even fly parents think their babies are cute. Then again, probably not. Maybe it's okay to kill flies because they're so small. If a thing is small enough, most people aren't bothered much by killing it, which is why ants, aphids, spiders, and all forms of bacteria get so paranoid. Harry, I tell you, I smell Listerine. The fool is going to kill us with Listerine just because we give him bad breath. I know it, Harry, I tell you, I know it. Maybe intelligence is the determining factor. I knew a professor once who avoided oysters because he said he wouldn't eat anything with that low of an IQ. Flies are pretty smart, though, in my judgment, much smarter than oysters and even deer. I don't mean to imply that they would score well on an SAT test. They can't even divide fractions, a characteristic they share with most college graduates. No, I don't think we should say it's all right to kill something merely because of low intelligence. If the ugliness faction didn't get Reg Sweeney, the intelligence faction would. Old Reg wouldn't be able to step out of his house long enough to snatch the Sunday paper off the porch. Don't get me wrong, I have no desire to be known as the friend of flies. I'm not going to sponsor a program whereby sportsmen's groups go around putting out rotten garbage for flies during hard winters. I certainly prefer deer over flies, and by a substantial margin, if for no other reason than that deer don't play kickball on a manure pile and then walk around on my potato salad before showering. On the other hand, flies don't eat my fruit trees down to the size of fiddlehead ferns. I really don't like killing anything, except fat flies maliciously buzzing my head while I'm trying to sleep. Generally speaking, I don't kill anything I don't eat. I draw the line on flies, though. The drumsticks are too small. Please join now in 1 minute of silent meditation, thought, or prayer. Our second reading is excerpted from a short story called A Road Less Traveled By, from The Night the Bear Ate Goomba by Patrick McManus. It reminds us that sometimes the trip is worth more than the arrival. In his poem, The Road Not Taken, Robert Frost wrote of two roads diverging in a wood, and he took the one less traveled by. It's a wonder he didn't see me somewhere along the way. I was wearing my cowboy hat, a red and black plaid shirt, and a worried look. People who take roads less traveled by often wear worried looks. I love driving roads less traveled by. The lesser, the better. My wife Bun and I were huckleberrying in the mountains the other day, and I pointed to a road less traveled by that diverged off the main Forest Service arterial. Let's go up that road, I said. Probably find some good picking. What road? She said. I don't see any road. And you claim to be a devotee of Robert Frost, I said. What would old Bob think of you now? Frost? What's he got to do with this insanity? Never mind. Anyway, what we'll do is just drive up the road a little ways, and if it looks too rough, we'll turn around and come back. Reluctantly, Bun accepted this suggestion, which is an old but good ruse, and wives usually fall for it. A few tense paragraphs later, Pat, Bun, and their Jeep, Old Hoss, are balanced on the edge of a rocky precipice. Pat writes, "Well, I'm sure the road will improve soon." I was lying, of course. Roads less traveled by never get better, only worse. Still, a modest white lie does little harm and some good. It can calm a nervous spouse and distract her from clawing up the upholstery. Now, I said, when we go over that shale pile ahead, we will tilt rather sharply toward the brink of the cliff and may even slide sideways a few inches, but that's only normal in situations such as this. I could see that these words had the desired calming effect on Bun, because she dabbed the perspiration from her forehead with a swatch of upholstery and even gave me a tiny, if grim, smile. Smiling with clenched teeth produces a rather grotesque effect, and I made a mental note to call this to her attention at a later time, provided there was a later time. We crossed the shale pile without harm, except for possible hearing loss as the result of loud shrieking in the closed cabin. As I told Bun, loud shrieking is wonderful for relieving tension, and she should have joined in. I get really annoyed at people who bottle up their tension. As I expected, the road deteriorated quickly beyond the shale pile, and Old Hoss began to whinny and slip and stumble. Well, I said, time to drop into four-wheel drive. I know some outdoorsmen who are so stupid they drive into a remote place in four-wheel drive until they get stuck. Then they're up the creek. The thing to do is go in two-wheel until you get stuck, and then you have four-wheel to get you out. Guess what, Bun said. You put it in four-wheel crossing the swamp and never took it out. Quite correct, I said. I was just checking to see if you remembered. You see, I had an ace up my sleeve all along, the power winch. Now, if you would be so kind as to pull out the winch cable and attach it to the trunk of one of those trees protruding from the avalanche, we will be on our way again. I would do it myself, but I don't want to take the time to pry my fingers off the steering wheel. Suddenly, I noticed Bun wildly waving her arms and shouting at me. Thinking this might be a warning that the cable was about to snap and send me and Hoss hurtling off the mountain, I sprang sprightly from the cab and drained off the spurt of excessive adrenaline by hopping smartly in place. "What?" I shouted. "What is it?" "Huckleberries," Bun shouted. "Tons of them! And they're as big as cherries. Bring the buckets." "Huckleberries," I said. "What do you want with huckleberries?" I hate picking huckleberries. I don't care if they're as big as grapefruit. What did Bun think, that I'd come all this way on a less traveled road to pick huckleberries? "I said," Bun shouted sternly, "bring the buckets. And you know what's even better? There are huckleberry pickers." There can't be huckleberry pickers, I said, not on a road less traveled by. Yeah, there are, Bun said. I-90 cuts across the mountain here. Isn't that great? We don't have to go back down that awful road. I don't know where Robert Frost ended up on his road less traveled by, but I doubt it was a 4-lane interstate. I've been depressed ever since. Please rise as you're willing and able to join in singing hymn 1031, May I be filled with loving kindness.
The war had just ended in 1916 when Robert Frost wrote The Road Not Taken. It was a poetic nod to the tension inherent in making life decisions. The wording is sparse and beautiful and almost haunting. It looks in hindsight at the deep meaning in little choices. And these are Frost words. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could, where it bent into the undergrowth. Then took the other just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear. And though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves, no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and it's made all the difference. McManus takes that deep, thoughtful piece and turns it around. He's a master of the road less traveled by, and a devotee of the roads you shouldn't have taken, and did anyway, and now look where you ended up. He's made a pilgrimage of the journey. He looks for meaning freely, if not always responsibly. And he counts as priceless those he meets on the trip, even when they don't have 2 cents, even when they eat at Greasy Gert's Gas, Grub, and Bait Shop. When we talk about our lives with others, we usually sound like Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken. We talk about our profound hindsight. We have these remarkable revelations. A listener hearing us as we lie happily would think we've made decision after decision wisely, each way leading on to way with deliberate choice, until we found ourselves filled with the wisdom of the journey and standing before our actual goal. Now, I don't know about you all, but it doesn't work that way for me. I've never knowingly been within sighting distance of Frost's 2 roads equally fair, and if I was, I missed them as I stumbled along, swatting at bugs and eating an apple I found in the field. I have, though, found myself on Pat McManus's road less traveled by, arriving at life destinations by doing the equivalent of falling off a mountain or 2 while being chased by a rabid wolverine. Of course, having Pat along would have made things a little easier because he's the inventor of something called the modified stationary panic. This guy is good at being lost. He says that if he tells a hunting partner, I'll cut across this hill and meet you on the next road, that 9 times out of 10, the next road he finds will be the Trans-Canada Highway, unless he's actually in Canada, in which case it may be the supply route to a Siberian reindeer farm. In his early days, Pat was a fan of what he called the full-bore linear panic. In this method, when you get lost, you just flat out run screaming, yelling help in any particular direction until you smack into a boulder, large tree, or elk, and then you sprint off in a new direction, still screaming. This is also known as the pinball or ricochet method of being lost. When we're talking about religion, many of us know this method of being lost. It's the one where we decide we're going to find some answers in life right now. We find an idea, an organized religion, a divine being, a school of thought, and we run at it full tilt. And when we hit something we don't like, well, we bounce off and sprint off in a new direction, still screaming. This type of panic gains momentum at every stride and may result in the practitioner ending up 3 metaphorical time zones from where they started, exhausted and being rescued by park services who bring them back to a spot 100 yards from where they started. Finding this too tiring to do often, Pat discovered the better approach, the modified stationary panic, or MSP. After seeing Bun perform a stationary panic when she saw a snake and started to leap up and down in place, chittering like an agitated squirrel and flailing her arms, he found himself laughing. And since she had the tent in her pack, this resulted in his sleeping outside in a torrential downpour. Thus, the creation of the MSP. For the MSP, you leap up and down in one spot, flailing as you would for the stationary panic, but you make the moves a little more rhythmic, as if you were doing a folk dance. He also suggests adding an Australian drinking song screamed at the top of your lungs to cover the chittering. How much easier would the road less traveled have been if every time the panic set in, we took a little time to sing and dance loudly and badly, to re-find ourselves and wear out the fear and anxiety before moving off in a new direction? The MSP works for a lot of things. Realizing that you are lost in your search for truth and meaning doesn't mean you have to run a mile screaming into a new and completely different mode of thought. Maybe where you want to be is 50 yards away. So embrace the modified stationary panic. Where was this wisdom all my life? You know, I did the pinball method a lot. Pat was born in Sandpoint, Idaho, on August 25th, and he was destined for humor from the beginning. Pat's daughter Kelly writes that Pat's mom said in later years that she paid the doctor in canned goods, but felt that she'd been overcharged by at least 2 quarts of pickled beets. This was the heart of the Great Depression, and heart would not be Pat's descriptive term, but never mind, she says. This is the fun part. Pat's schooling started as a baby. His mother would take him with her into the classroom of the one-room school where she taught. His mother was so accustomed to this kid going out a window and taking off whenever he pleased that she let him do so all through kindergarten and first grade. In second grade, his blissful wandering ended when his mother failed him for the year. In his story, Bad Company says, back when I was a kid, my mother constantly warned me about falling in with bad company. Then one day it occurred to her that I was the bad company and she had to warn others about falling in with me. Years later, Pat's report card for second grade really was discovered, and he's put pictures online. Under reason for failure, his mother had written too many absences. Since Pat actually lived at the school, he claims this failure as his first major accomplishment in life. He had found the first road not traveled by. He did it his own way. He married Darlene, his honey bun, and spent most of his adult life writing for Outdoor Life and Field and Stream. And through it all, there's an amazing theme of love, camping, boating, hunting, and fishing, most of which were just an excuse to enjoy the outdoors, spend time with his little girls, and with his often bizarre friends. In his stories, he has an amount of grumpiness with people who take great pleasure in the minutiae of his activities. He refers to firearms enthusiasts as ammosexuals and gun nuts, and he treats their excited sharing of the fine points of ballistics as something to be endured, to get on with a good hunting trip. He almost never actually succeeds at killing anything. And when I went back and reread his books after I'd gone to seminary, I expected to find myself uncomfortable. And instead I found over and over reminders of the things we are called to as UUs. He talks about philosophy. He says this in a column called I Fish, Therefore I Am. The best philosopher I've ever known was a man by the name of Rancid Crabtree. And Rancid lived in a little cabin in the woods behind our place. And since his time was free from all forms of gainful employment, he was able to devote himself to philosophy for up to 12 hours a day, not including, cleaning and eating the catch. As a student of philosophy, I often sat at the feet of this great teacher, though I preferred a chair upwind. In the different stories, Rancid was carried away by a giant demon bat. He fought loggers while wearing a blue dress. He tried to catch grasshoppers in a net while hanging off the front of a Model T. And he didn't want to take a bath for fear of breaking his protective crust. He lied, he got lost in the swamp, he tormented Pat's grandmother in every way possible. He got chased by a stuffed mountain lion. And yet, he was the first one to chase the skunks from under the house, and he saved Grandma's honor at the county fair. He dragged the fatherless Pat and his nincompoop friends camping and fishing, and he forgave them over and over when they failed every test of adulthood insanity. When his longtime lady friend beat him in a shooting contest and showed him up in bravery, Rancid grinned and applauded, proud to know her. He tells Pat at one point, there ain't no private property where you can't fish if you know how to hunker a spell with the man what owns it. And assured him later that ain't nothing never just right to do what you want to do when you want to do it, so you best go ahead and do it anyway. The old mountain man got it wrong more times than he got it right, but would make friends with a rock. Believed in pushing ahead even when things looked bleak. was proud to know strong women found no shame in literally wearing a dress or stopping to smell the flowers. Other friends get mentioned often: the confused and often concussed Rhett Sweeney, the incompetent Al Finley, Pat's sister, who he calls the troll, the often maligned outdoorsman Jim Zumbo. Each one gets treated as an essential part of the world which would not be complete without them, and without the various mean cows, tactically trained deer, giggling elk, and other things out to make fools of us all. This guy isn't some kind of sage. He certainly was not a religious man according to his writing. Now, in real life, he was a practicing Catholic. He doesn't talk about deep things. He talks about cows and tents and taking your kids out, and about being lost and getting found, treasuring your friends, listening to the elderly. He talks about kindness and respect, the reasons we do the things we do, and over he makes meaning of the journey, even when it gets muddy and wet and when you want to go home. So you know what? Maybe he is a religious man after all. I highly recommend checking out his books. If you want to laugh, they're great for a summer read, and maybe more. Amen. We take the light from this chalice and we carry it into the world to light our way through field and forest, city and stream. Please rise and body your spirit as you're willing and join in singing our closing hymn, number 29, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore Thee. The service has finished, but the time for service has just begun. Go forth joyfully and take the road less traveled by. Peace, ashe, and may it be so. We're going to sing through the postlude twice.
Continue to grow.
Thank you. That was lovely.